Okay, so you might be wondering, why do the Spanish finally start focusing on Texas? And the reason for this is beginning in the 1680s, the Spanish feel like they might lose Texas to a rival, the French. And what you have is this tussle in North America between two competing powers, the Spanish and the French. So here's the story there. And the big picture is that when the Spanish feel confident about their control over Texas, they ignore Texas. When they feel like they might lose Texas to a rival power such as the French, then they start pouring resources into Texas because they want to hold on to it. They may not think about it that much, but they certainly don't want to lose it either. And this is what happens beginning in the 1680s. Okay, so here's the story. And again, this is on the outline I posted. There was a great French explorer by the name of La Salle. And La Salle was he was a nut. He was kind of hated by his men, but he was actually an extraordinary figure. He is the man that he's the explorer. Again, he's French. He did a lot of things, but significantly for us, in the early 1680s, he went through the Great Lakes and he sailed down the Mississippi River all the way to the Gulf of New Mexico. So, why is that important for Texas? Here's why it's important for Texas. By sailing down the Gulf of Mexico, LaSalle claims the area east of the Gulf of Mexico, or okay, by sailing down the Mississippi to the Gulf of Mexico, what LaSalle can do is he claims the area east of the Mississippi River for France. Okay. So suddenly now in the 1680s, Spain has a new neighbor, France. Now, the land had always been there, but no one had really taken control over it or claimed it. But in the 1680s, France claims Louisiana. And actually, France had a huge stake in North America. I can't remember the exact figure now, but I think something like 12 current American states were controlled by France between the 1680s and the early 1800s. So France had a major empire in North America during the colonial period. So the Spanish now begin to worry because they have a neighbor. And then LaSalle does something that makes the Spanish worry even more and actually makes the Spanish freak out. He decides he wants to come back to Louisiana, the territory that he's claimed for France, and he wants to settle it. He wants to populate it. There's a very famous saying, to populate is to govern. And so LaSalle goes to the King of France, and this is all very, very hush hush. And what he does is he asked the King of France to um, give him resources to settle Louisiana territory. So what LaSalle wants to do, he wants to bring soldiers, but he also wants to bring women. He also wants to bring children. He wants to start settling the Louisiana territory that he has just claimed, which is right next door to Spanish Texas. So in the 1680s, the French king goes along with this LaSalle's proposal, and LaSalle sails for North America. But instead of arriving in French Louisiana, the maps are terrible. There's no really decent navigation. What happens is, by mistake, LaSalle winds up in Matagorda Bay near Corpus Christi, Texas. So just by mistake, LaSalle ends up in Texas. Um, and so it's an honest mistake, but the Spanish don't see it that way. And if you're looking at a screen, I have a map of LaSalle. I have a map of LaSalle's journey, and I'll post a map on Canvas as well. So the 1680s, LaSalle, who had claimed Louisiana for France, he comes back to North America, he's heading for the Mississippi River, kind of what later becomes New Orleans. By the way, New Orleans and San Antonio were both founded the same year, 1718, although New Orleans became a much bigger city much more quickly than San Antonio. But so La Salle ends up in Texas and Spanish Texas, and the Spanish just absolutely freak out. They find out about La Salle's expedition. Someone had deserted from his expedition. The Spanish capture this guy. He spills the beans. And then the Spanish realize that La Salle has landed on their territory. And so they freak out. They freak out because suddenly it looks like the French are trying to muscle in to Spanish Texas, and that the French potentially are trying to grab Texas from Spain. Okay, so why do the French care about Texas? Texas, I mean, why do the Spanish care about Texas? They haven't really devoted resources here. I've talked about there's no mineral wealth. The natives are too tough. Well, here's why the Spanish care about Texas. Texas is a buffer zone between France and the silver mines of central Mexico, San Miguel, Guanajuato, that area of central Mexico, which are some of the biggest silver mining areas in the entire world. In the 1600s, something like 60% of the silver that was mined globally was mined in central Mexico. So the Spanish just assume that the French are trying to grab Texas as the first step in capturing the mining areas of central Mexico. So what Texas serves from the Spanish point of view, it serves as a buffer zone between Louisiana and central Mexico. And the French believe that the Spanish believe that the French are trying to penetrate that buffer zone with the idea of capturing central Mexico and capturing the incredibly wealthy mining areas of central Mexico. So the Spanish freak out. They just assume the worst. And they decide to start hunting down, they've got to hunt down La Salle. And so they begin what historians call the wilderness manhunt. They organize an expedition of Spaniards, and they come up into Spanish Texas, trying to capture La Salle, trying to subjugate him, trying and just to extinguish this French threat. Well, they didn't really have to worry because, first of all, La Salle had come here by mistake. It wasn't part of some grand French scheme to capture Texas in order to get closer to central Mexico. It was a mistake. La Salle was heading towards the Mississippi River, number one. But the other thing is La Salle comes up into the Matagorda Bay area. He establishes a settlement called Fort San Luis, but he doesn't know where the hell he is. He thinks the Rio Grande may be the Mississippi. So he sends out expeditions. The Karankawa this time are not friendly. They had been friendly to the Vaca, but they've learned their lesson. They were not friendly to the French at all. Fort San Luis, this very, very rudimentary settlement that La Salle had created, it comes under a native attack, especially Karankawa attack. La Salle decides to try to reconnect with the French, which are east of where he's landed. So he leads a small group from Fort St. Louis towards the Mississippi River. Somewhere in East Texas, we don't know where his men they decide they've had enough of La Salle and they murder him and bury him. I don't know if anybody's from Navasota. That's where my son got married. Navasota claims that La Salle was killed and buried at the site where Navasota is. That's almost certainly not true, but there's a statue of La Salle in Navasota. So if you ever in Navasota and you see the statue of La Salle, that's what the whole story is. And then the native groups just come in and they wipe out Fort San Luis. They take some prisoners. They kill most of the French that are there. So the whole La Salle expedition is a disaster from the French point of view. But from the Spanish point of view, it's significant because finally now the Spanish decide that they have to start paying attention to Texas, that they have just ignored Texas. And now it looks like Texas is under threat because the French are next door. And you had missionaries, especially Franciscans, who wanted to come up here because they wanted to Christianize the Caddoan people. So La Salle's mistake in landing on Texas provokes the Spanish in the 1680s and the 1690s to start paying attention to their settlement in Texas and begin the process of settling Texas.